Hi, it's me, Makeup by the Numbers. Welcome to my channel where I talk beauty and combined my love for beauty with my love for Excel spreadsheets. It's dorky, but it's beautiful and it's all in good fun. So this video is going to be a follow-up to a series of 3 that I did previously, actually tallying up what makeup palettes specifically for eyeshadow that I was actually using per month. So I'm going to bring that up. And what I found was that out of the 70 palettes that I have, I didn't actually get through using 25 of them, which is about 35%. I say about 35, it's 35.71%. Palettes that I didn't use in the last 3 months. And that maybe sounds bad, but it is only a 3-month period. I think if I were to use all my palettes for an entire year and track it, I would get around to using them. That being said, I also know that because I was tracking it, there was a little bit of sort of bias and inclination to use different palettes. I wanted to use palettes multiple times in a row or just grab the palette that was on the counter, and I didn't because I was tracking it. So I think these numbers are a little generous, and even though I did use 64% of my palettes, I think that number would have been lower had I not been tracking it so diligently. So when I went and looked at sort of these habit patterns of multiple uses versus single using, just to kind of gauge how much tracking my palette usage was actually forcing a habit of changing my eyeshadow palette, I found that in the months May, June, and July, I used 10, 9, and 7 palettes respectively 2 times or more, which was 41, 56, and 35%, so averaging out about 40% of the time I was using a palette more than once. So in order to really get through my palettes for the year, I could only use a palette once, even when I wanted to use it more. And that felt very forced and stilted. Like, I want to love my makeup and I want to play with makeup. And a lot of times when you do one look with a palette, you get inspired to do another. And I just wasn't able to do that. So when I did get around to a palette, I found myself gravitating towards the same shades and the same kind of looks because I wasn't giving myself the freedom that I needed to play and have fun, which is kind of weird and not at all what I want with makeup, because a lot of the times I do my makeup for fun. I'm not going anywhere. I don't need to do it, but I want to do it. So the total number of looks that I was actually creating with these palettes is slightly higher than the number of palettes that I was using. Sometimes, I talked about this in my other looks, I would change my eyeshadow look when I got home from work and I went from daytime to nighttime for whatever reason. So even though there's only 31 days in May, 30 in June, and 31 again in July, I actually did 38, 37, and 32 looks respectively. So I actually averaged 35 and 2/3 of a look each month, which is 1.1 looks a day, so just over 1. Even though there's multiple looks per palette, that's actually offset by the days that I went, completely eyeshadow free. Sometimes palettes also help each other too, so there are occasions where I would reach for multiple palettes, and I do count those if I used them to help each other. Now, if I just went for like an inner corner highlight or a skin tone shade or like a soft medium brown that I have in 1,000 other palettes, I didn't necessarily count that unless I actually started to use something that was unique to that palette. But for the most part, I mean, again, statistics tend to average out true the more you have. So for a month, maybe the numbers are a little suspect, but for over the course of 3 months, I can genuinely say 1.1 or 1.16 is actually what it was, is pretty spot on for my palette usage. So when I'm thinking about what I'm trying to do to enjoy makeup is to allow myself to actually increase the number of looks I'm creating with a palette, and increasing which means decreasing the number I go through in a month, which I know seems counterintuitive. Like, you would think I'd want to use more of them, and I do want to use more of them. But like I said, I was using them, but I wasn't using them as often as I would like. So I need to have a way to curate my collection into smaller bits so that I can ensure that I'm using all of my palettes and that I'm not getting overwhelmed with choice, but I'm still leaving enough that I can play around and have fun, and I'm not restricting myself to like one daily look. I mean, I certainly have palettes that I could do like a 1-month challenge and, only use that palette for a month, but I don't want to do that because it would come at the expense of some of my other palettes, and I don't want to get tired of any of them. So some of my issues that I'm facing are just the reality of having so many palettes. Like if you can't use them and you can't cycle through them, you have too many. So what am I going to do to enjoy it? I don't want to feel guilty when I'm using a palette and it comes at the expense of another. And then just from a more realistic standpoint, the store just starting to get a little bit messy. A little bit of that is due to having so many palettes, but most of it is actually due to having to rummage through them to get to other palettes. And then when I do get a new palette, it gets priority because I want to play with it and I'm excited and I've never used it, but then it has to go back to the end so I can cycle through some other palettes. And who wants to do that? Who wants to get a new palette, try it once and go, well, that's it, I got to put it away now so I can use another one. Right? Like again, it's that psychological impact of feeling guilty for using a palette, and that you should never feel guilty for enjoying yourself. As long as it's not hurtful and it's within your means. I'm not saying go do cocaine. I said it's fun, but I said if you own a makeup palette, you should definitely have fun. Have fun with it. So what are my options then at that point? Number one is to declutter. If you have too much of something to enjoy it and you're not getting to keep the things that are fresh, you can get rid of it. And a lot of people who aren't in the influencing community do choose to do that. But they also have more palettes and a different lifestyle and a different reason for owning those palettes. I didn't want to do that because one, I love what I have. I don't want to declutter. You will see me throw one out actually, but for the most part, that's not decluttering. Like there's a valid reason for me to get rid of that palette. So my heart wasn't into decluttering. Like it's just antithetical to what I do as a person and the values that I represent, and to some extent what I promote on this channel. So decluttering was not an option for me. Now I could leave it as it is. I can access any of my shadows at any time reasonably, so that's a pro. My shadow usage wasn't really a problem for me until I started tracking it, so I could just stop tracking it and start living. Without the spreadsheet. That's absolutely an option as well. I have the data now because I did track it, so I can better inform my shopping, but I didn't need to necessarily change anything. So when I thought about this option and kind of going with my gut and like, okay, why do I not want to do this option? The reality is I wanted to change things up. I wanted to have fun. I wanted to play around and do something different with my eyeshadow. And like, if I don't like it, I can put it back. But in a year from now, I might feel totally different. I might love the seasonal look. And of course, when you're adding and changing up your makeup collection a year from now, I will not have the same pieces I have now. So we'll see. So as far as changing it up, I could do like a daily drawer. I know a lot of people have like here's my backup stash, but here's what I'm trying to pan, or here's what I go to every day. But that, again, that's not really my style. I did like that it was flexible. I do like a daily drawer is you can update it weekly, you can update it monthly, but it isn't suited to anything else in my collection. It would only be suited for eyeshadows, so again, it didn't really make sense for me to do that. I only have a couple primers, a couple foundations, a couple concealers. I'm pretty minimal. So what would a daily drawer do? Absolutely nothing. And I'm honest with people. I am not a project panner. I tend to naturally pan. Again, I don't throw something out unless there's something wrong with it. I don't spend my money on some things I don't have, think twice, pay once, those type of things. So I decided not to go for a daily drawer, which meant that I went with my fourth option that I thought of, which was to do a seasonal update. And that's more like a quarterly rotation. And that averages out for me in my size of collection, 17.5 palettes a quarter, which is about 5.6 uses a palette, which is right where I wanted. When I was looking through my spreadsheet of what I was using, there were some palettes that I was hitting 4 or 5, and I don't think I hit 6 on any of them, but it's possible I would have if I had had the time and space in my schedule to play with them. Like my sweet spot for using a palette and creating different looks is really closer to 3 or 4 than it is 1. And again, I was using 58% of the time, I was only using a palette once before I put it back and grabbed a different one. So I would really like to have that flexibility to, again, increase my palette usage while decreasing the total number that I needed to pull from. And it's also easier to track because I only have to track 18 palettes versus 70. And then of course I can always pull something out of cycle. Like if there's a shade in a particular palette that I know I need and love, there's no rule that says I can't use it. It's just not going to be one that I grab for when I'm just playing around, if I'm just creating a look, if I'm just grabbing the one that's on my counter. So, you know, just because there's 9 months in between palettes doesn't mean like you've forgotten about that palette. I mean, actually, I hope you do. I hope you appreciate, I hope I appreciate what I'm able to use this quarter. I'm a little apprehensive, honestly, about going 9 months between palettes, but I'm also looking forward to it because I wanted this change. And if you don't like it, go back to the way it was. It was a really fun video to film, so I'm kind of hoping you like it. Now, before I forget, when it actually goes to and I insert my clip, because I was filming on my phone, the aspect ratio and maybe the volume will change, so I'll adjust what I can, obviously, in post-processing, but just heads up in case you go, I can't hear anything or it's way too loud, just keep that in mind. So in that video, one of the things, my top priority in that video was to split up my collections. So I didn't want my ABH, my Odin's Eye, and my Nomad, some of these brands that I have more than one palette from, I didn't want them to end up all together. That would defeat the purpose and make them feel very monochromatic. It would make it much harder to go 9 months in between palettes. And you know, with certain palettes, certain collections, I have palettes that are my favorite that I reach for more often than palettes that are not. So I really wanted to break those up. And I really wanted to capture the feel of a season. So I wanted my wintry feeling palettes, you know, with maybe some deep neutral shades or maybe my icy blues, you know, those types of feelings to go in winter. But I wanted my really vibrant popsicle colors to be in summer. But I also didn't want to limit myself. So I needed neutrals in all 4 seasons. And I wanted maybe I had some royal blues that would go in the summer and some icy blues that would go in the winter, but maybe I had some gray blues for the fall. You know, I want to wear blue year round. I don't want to wait 9 months in order to wear a blue again. So it was really important to me that I balanced my collection and not just split it up. And then it was also really important to me to still be able to make cohesive looks. So I have lighter, darker, pastel, deep tones. So one more thing is if you do try to do this yourself, set aside at least an hour, depending on how many palettes you have. You probably want an hour or at least two. Set aside a lot of floor space as well. I was working in a small amount of floor space, but I would have liked to have more. It was just I was limited by my camera range, which kept cutting off the right side. So I fixed and posted pictures where I can in the post editing, but it is what it is. Doing it in like this narrow space between my dresser and my bed was the safest place I could do it to keep it away from my dog and my kids, but it wasn't the best place in terms of spreading out. Refrain from swatching. So if you do decide to like break up your palettes, like you'll just never finish. Like you'll appreciate your shades and you'll play with them, but you're gonna get eyeshadow everywhere and on your arms and stuff, but you're not necessarily going to finish quickly. And then don't second guess yourself. There's definitely quite a few points in the video and while I was sorting my palette, so I was like, no, this does not feel like a winter palette, but this is where I'm putting it. One, it helps do what I was saying earlier, which is to keep your seasons from becoming too monochromatic, but it also helps speed up the process, of course. And then last but not least, you know, you're really going with your gut and having fun, and you can always change it. So make decisions, and if it doesn't work out, you can change it. Trust yourself, have fun. Don't turn this into like an agonizing, anxiety producing process. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you stay and see what I actually ended up with. I hope I give you a little bit of inspiration so that you can kind of see how the numbers add up in your makeup collection, and maybe if you have trouble going through all your palettes, maybe this is a counterintuitive way, but actually a very logical and well-reasoned way to help organize your collection to make sure you get through it. And I will follow up with you in a year because that's how long this is going to take me to get through all my palettes. But again, very excited, very happy I did this. So we are going to start off with my ABH palettes. It's going to be a little bit tricky because a lot of her color stories are so neutral, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. I think for a summer palette, the Riviera palette is probably going to be my place to start. Like, that's an obvious summer palette to me, so we'll start there. Then for spring, I think this is going to be another tough one, but I really feel like Cosmos, and just with these gorgeous duochromes, is really good. I wish the bottom row, like a lot of you, I wish those were pastels, but they're warm neutrals, whatever, that's what she does. But this will be the spring palette. And then for fall, I have thought about this already, so it's going to be Subculture. Like, those grungy tones are perfect for fall. And then winter, I'm definitely struggling with, so it could be sultry with those cool grays, or really any of them, but I think I'm going to do Norvina just because, like, these purple and pink tones are wintry, and they could also be spring, but I know I'm going to have other similar tones and palettes for spring, so I'm going to put this in the winter. You know, I don't want only pastel pinks in spring, and I want pastel pinks in like other times of the year, right? You don't want to limit yourself. So I'm going to open up Carly Bible to kind of see where she takes me. I'm already thinking, because she's a little bit softer, that she's going to be spring. I am really liking that. So maybe she'll be spring, and then I think Prism will be summer, because it's another really bright palette. I'll have to add something in summer to kind of soften those palettes up, but that'll be easy for me. So I definitely need to pick out another winter and another fall one. I'm going ahead and put Soft Glam in fall. I mean, I know a palette like this you can wear any time of the year, right? But it's a little bit warmer and a little bit cooler seasoned, warmer tones, so I think that'll be great in fall. I might have to move it around if I'm not happy with it. And then sultry, I guess we'll go with winter, because these cool tones are definitely wintry. Well, besides Bloom, but I never use Bloom. So that's kind of a guess. Modern Renaissance, you know, I think of this definitely as a spring palette, but maybe I'll put it in fall, because I don't have any of these pinkish neutrals in fall yet, and you could do a fall look at these. Not a warm fall look, but definitely like a pinkish one. Rose Metals, oof. I definitely feel fall or winter. 100% I'm feeling fall or winter, and I need a winter. You know, this is one of our more distinct palettes with these colors, so winter it is. And then I need a spring, a summer, and I have a wild card. So that's such a spring. I don't even need to guess where that's going. So that'll be spring. And then I need a summer and anywhere. These are deeper tones, the Jackie Aina palette, and these are lighter tones. I'm really struggling to make this my summer palette, so I'm really struggling to make both these a summer palette. Well, I'm going to go with my gut then and make this a spring palette and make this a winter palette. These dark tones on me are for winter. If you have a different skin complexion, you probably won't think of it the same way as I do, but I do. You know what, let's go ahead and make the Cosmos palette a summer palette, because these shades are fun and sparkly, and they can be brightened up. I mean, it was a summer release, so you know what? I'm going to put it in a summer palette, and it's very different from my other summer palettes. So if I recap, here's my spring with my light pastels, my fun shimmers, and and Nouveau, whatever Nouveau is. Nouveau is probably one of my favorite palettes. Okay, I can totally see this being spring, and I feel like I've got the right variety of shades. And then if I recap my summer, I've got really bright and colorful. I've got different type of color, but totally different colors, much deeper, richer. And then, ooh, I like this because I've got different saturation levels, so that's pretty nice too. I feel good about this. It's not too boring. It's not like every time I reach for one of these palettes, I'm going to feel like I'm reaching for the exact same palette. That's what I want to avoid. I don't want 3 months of like boringness. Now I have 3 velvety ones. Fall and pink, fall and warm, fall and grungy greens and umbers. Yeah. These are a little close, but I'll spice these up with other brands. And then for winter, I did good with the winter. I have some winter purples. I have some winter metals, some cooler toned neutral winters, and some very light but still wintry pinks and purples. So we did good here. So moving on, I have my Ace Beauté collection, and this is going to be pretty straightforward. Nostalgia palette is an obvious bright summer palette. And Falling for You is a definite cidery fall palette. The most wintry palette, all of these, ooh, it's going to be tough, but I'm going to go ahead and put this blue one. I'm going to end up with a lot of blues in other palettes, and this is the only one that feels even remotely wintry to me. I've split already most of them up pretty well. I need spring, and then I have 2 wild cards. So, well, this is easy. This is a spring. This is Scarlet Dusk. I love their covers, by the way. I just think that Art Nouveau metallic decoration, or Art Deco, actually is so pretty. And then what do I think about these? I feel like they're both fall, but I don't want to put them all in fall. And I have summer with the Nostalgia palette, so how do I feel about these together? Do I feel these are too much of the same, or do they work together? I feel like these work together. I feel like I can have these both in summer. So these will be summer, and then you will be my little fall beauty. So moving on to, now Natasha Denona's fun because I have 3 middies and a mini. I used to have the Jubilee palette, but it's been destroyed, and I have the mint shade here and the mint shade here. And Limoncello, so I no longer need it, but I mean, this one's obviously summer, right? If it's not summer, it's spring, and this is spring. Can you all agree? We have spring, summer, and I need a fall and a winter. So which one of these is fall and which one is winter? I think that's really tough because they're both pretty good throughout the year. Which one complements what I've already decided to have in the fall and in the winter? And I think there's no way I have anything like this. This is going to end up in the winter. I already have Subculture in the fall. And these warm reds will look good in the fall, along with the greens and blues. This is one of my favorite palettes. This was not like highly loved by her, but I love it. So this is a fall style, and I'm pretty happy so far. Now let's separate Odin's Eye, which is one of my favorite brands, but I find that I'm either getting other releases or I miss out their special releases and I don't get as many palettes. This is the only one that I've ended up with, ironically, despite loving their color stories and loving their formula. And then I'll go ahead and throw in my lethals, but I can't hold them all open. But I mean, this is so obviously a fun summer palette. I absolutely adore it. Summer. And then this is obviously a spring palette. But I need a fall and a winter. If I'm going to do a fall and a winter, I think I'm going to keep these cooler tones for winter, and the versatility of this will be great for fall. And again, not like a lot of other fall palettes I have, so that'll be fun. So here are my 9 pans or smallers. It's so funny because I know I have another kitten palette on the way. So like I know as I redo these, I'm going to like have to put palettes and rearrange them periodically. I don't think this is going to be a struggle either. So fall feels, this is going to be fall. It's a nice neutral palette for that too. And Fruit Sorbet is going to be summer. Well, this is the most wintry one I have. So this will be winter. It's funny, their formula is not that great, but their packaging is beautiful. I'm going to throw this in spring just so I have some brighter colors in spring. I have so many bright colors in summer, I don't need it there. And then, wow, those stories are a little bit similar, but I can put them wherever I want. So I definitely need to break them up. And I think I'm going to do fall and spring. I think that's how I'm going to do it. For no other reason than I felt like it. So up next I have 3 Sigma palettes, and which is a shame, is another brand I love, but I can't afford a lot of their palettes. And then I have 3 smaller, well, not smaller brands, but smaller collections that I have. I only have this one by Wondrous Beauty, the one by Alter Ego, which is Natasha Denona's gold dupe, and then this MAC Pretty Punked, Alice in Wonderland, the Angela Bright collab, and the On Nook collab. I'm gonna separate my Sigmas. This needs to be a summer. Bright colors and my neutrals and cool tones. I could wear this year round, but I have nothing neutral in my summer collection. And then I'll put her in fall for kind of like the same purpose, but she also has these really fall tones in her palette that I love. Which means spring or winter, clearly spring. And I'm left with the Need for a Winter, and then 2 wild cards. This is clearly supposed to be summer vibes, and it definitely gives that, like, it could be a spring palette. You know what, I am gonna make it a spring palette because I don't have these soft neutrals in spring, so that'll be fine. And then winter, obviously the gold palette is so beautiful, and I really love Alter Ego's formula on this one. I don't think they nail on it in every collab, but they did on the Goddess palette. And then this is MAC. So I know you see those pops of color, but this pink is a highlighter, and those shimmers and those silvers I use mostly in the winter. Those are like great holiday looks and most New Year's looks. I already know where I use this pad, and it's during the winter, so I'm gonna put this palette in the winter. So believe it or not, I usually use this one in the summer, but I also see it being a winter palette, so I think I'm going to put it there, just again for variety, not really for the tones in it, but just so I don't make my collections too limited. I guess I'll put this one in the summer. Just, it's good all around, lots of shades. It could go anywhere, but we'll see if I'm happy with it there. I can always change my mind. Which means I need fall, winter, and whatever. Let's make this winter. This feels so awful. I don't think I'm getting them right. Let's make this fall. I have lots of purples in fall already. Well, I have lots of purples in spring, so we're just getting stuck. This is going to be spring. I don't actually have a lot of confidence in that one, but I made my decision so quickly, I think I'm just going to go with that. Oof, there's Violet Voss Care Bears, and wow. I'm looking at that as something I'm not sure if I want to keep that anymore. I certainly don't need it. My favorite shimmer's all torn up, my kids messed it up. I really like this color. I don't use red or pink or blue because I have them in other palettes. I can't believe I hit pan. I mean, I didn't hit pan, it got torn up pan, but ugh. Okay. Well, here's my declutter, guys. You saw it here first. I do occasionally throw palettes away. Okay, that's easy to sort. So, one pretty vulgar palette from a long time ago. Let's see, is this the new nude? I think this is the new nude. This is Rose Gold Remastered. These palettes are $7 and $8, and their formula is amazing. Here's my actual Huda Beauty palette, which is still my favorite out of that I'm going to lay down here. And then House Slabs. And I put sultry in winter, so I'm going to put these cool neutrals in fall, so I have cool neutrals to play from. And that one just screams spring to me. Plus I have Cosmos already in summer, and I have the Stone Vibes in summer, so yeah, I can make this spring, which is good. That's what I really feel for it. Now, what do I do with warm pinkish neutrals? Like, I don't have that in every category. I did not think these 3 would be this hard to sort. Summer. Fall. And winter, I'll be fine. And I know what you're thinking. Why on earth is this winter? It just is, okay? I need some neutrals in winter. But you're right, nothing about that palette makes me feel winter. So we're gonna go for it. Again, this is like a hard palette because it's so perfect, but, and I'm gonna get more Blend Bunny. I just got this one while it was on sale. Her formula is amazing and everything. I know a lot of influencers talk it up and it is just as good as you think it would be, but if this isn't summer, I don't know what is. And if I have to move them around to balance out my final numbers, I will. I have these two gorgeous ones from What's Up Beauty, so I need to split up these, obviously, and I've already done summer. So I'm probably going to do fall and winter, and I have my Alamar here. So this is obviously another summer and another spring. So I guess these will be fall and winter. So which one's which? Let's do Geode's fall and monsoon winter. The smallest Nomad palettes first, which I feel like this is going to be super easy. Winter, fall, summer, and then I'll count these as one, kind of like with the lethal, and I'll do spring. That was easy. That was the easiest it's been, but Nomad does such great theming. I knew it was going to be that way. All right, Orient, Paradise, and I only have 3 of the big ones, but I have so many Nomad palettes, I'm sure they'll even out at the end. Summer, spring, and do I want to do fall or winter? I really only use it for the neutrals, but those are very Christmassy tones, so I'm going to call it fall. Okay, well that's 90% of those palettes on the right that you can see fully. So I feel like let's start with the obvious. I already have the pastel palette from Natasha Denona in spring, so I'm actually going to make this summer, which frees this one up for spring. So let me add the 2 in that I wasn't able to include. Okay, that was fun. But Whistler Snow Lodge pulls really wintry, and I don't have a lot of blues. Am I lying? Do I have a lot of blues? I don't know. But that's a clear winter to me. So, and Hudson Valley is a clear fall. I mean, again, they do their color stories with these seasons in mind, so it's just so beautiful to like sort them like this and have fun with it. I definitely want to split up these 2. I definitely want to split up these 2. So I think I'm going to do a surprising maneuver and put this in winter. Most of my duochromes are in summer as well as my more intense shades. So I'm going to put this in winter and bring in a little bit of variety of color into winter. I need this for summer. I need to do another fall and summer. And that's just what I keep thinking for these 2. So even though Subculture's in it, I'll make it work. And then these 2 wherever they want. Wow, these could really go anywhere. I could just see myself wearing certain shades of them or wearing certain products or making looks out of them. Like 3 out of the 4 seasons of the year. So I'm really not sure. But I felt like this was summer when I looked at it. But I also feel like I need something a little more intense for spring because my spring is looking really pale. So I'm going to put it in spring. And then I definitely have winter covered for these blues. I don't have anything like this for fall, but where does Fire and Ice fall? No pun intended. Is that fall? I guess I'll go with my heart and put it in fall. Now I need to count up to make sure my seasons are balanced. Here's summer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 3 is 17, 18. Spring is 4, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, that feels good. Fall is 3, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Well, that was a mess, but that worked out. Winter is 5, 6, 10, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Wow.